Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by the person at the center of the coronavirus epidemic right now in the state of Missouri, the Mayor of St. Louis, Lyda Krewson. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. So pleased to be here with you.
It is one of the more serious times I've ever seen. You can tell it on a leader, a commissioner. At 9/11, everybody was scared for a while, but then the real tragedy was a little bit removed. This tragedy's hit home almost every county, nowhere more than the city of St. Louis. What is the status of the city right now?
Well, you know, between the city and the county and St. Charles County, we have almost 2/3 of the cases in the state, in the entire state. So, you know, we're looking at 1,200 cases, give or take, here in the city of St. Louis right now. And of course, cases are important, but the other thing that's really important is how many people are in the hospital. Yeah. And, you know, we're looking at around 700 people that are hospitalized at this time. We believe, we hope that we have hit the peak and we're headed down the other side a bit. But we won't actually know that until we can look back to see, well, was that the peak or not? We think it is. The people of St. Louis, the region, have done such a terrific job of staying home, of social distancing, of washing their hands, of really taking the behavioral steps that needed to be taken in order to tamp down the spread of COVID-19. So I give the credit to this improved result to the people of St. Louis who have been just really troopers about all this. And this has not been easy. You know, it's not easy to stay home. It's not easy. You're trying to work from home at one end of the kitchen table, and you're trying to help your kid do their homework at the other end of the kitchen table. It's hard. It's hard, and it's hard on people. But they've done it. We in the city of St. Louis, we got to do it for a little bit longer. So, you know, I give credit to those folks, and then talk about the people that are still on the front lines going to work every day.
Have to be exhausted.
You know, police officers, firefighters, dispatchers, people who run our water department, people who pick up trash. Grocery workers, absolutely. All the folks working at Schnucks and Aldi's and all of the, even the gas stations and the convenience stores. So all of those folks. And then, of course, health care workers, doctors, nurses, people who work in dietary, people who work in housekeeping, x-ray, all the departments in a hospital. So, you know, both places have been hard to be. Being home's been hard to be. Being on the front lines has been extra hard to be.
Well, a lot of folks have watched this show. Some of these measures will come to an end tonight at midnight. In St. Louis, that's not the case. Explain to folks that may not understand, if you're from Howell County, and you're going to go back to some form of normal life tomorrow morning, why are people in the city of St. Louis not being able to join in that, having to wait?
So I think what you look at is we got 114 counties in Missouri, and one size doesn't fit all. When you look at the St. Louis region, City, County, and St. Charles, where we've had 2/3 of the cases, we just want to give it another week or two before we begin easing up and sending people back to work, because we don't want to do that too soon when we've got all this prevalence of the virus here, and then have to go back to this. So it's different here than if you're from a county with only a few cases.
Sure.
And you know, we live very densely here, and so it's just you know, we're asking people to bear with us for a little while longer.
What are the factors that's going to go into your decision to start to ease those restrictions?
Well, when we began talking about this, what we wanted the factor to be was testing. But we all know that testing has been somewhat of a debacle in the country. We just don't have enough testing. So,
you know, I think it's an impossible situation.
But
even those that aren't reflexively negative about President Trump, I'm not sure you're going to be able to look back and say the testing is where it needed to be. We're 7 weeks into this now.
The testing is just not where it needs to be, but that's not an excuse. You know, you have to deal with the information that you have. And so, yes, we're still looking at testing, we're still looking at new cases, but we're also looking at who's in the hospital. That's a bit of a lagging indicator, but if you're in the hospital, and if our number of hospital cases are going down, and maybe the number of people in ICU is going down, the number of people that are on ventilators is going down, those are all good indicators. Testing is getting a little bit better, and it needs to continue to get better, because just because we begin easing back into going back to work doesn't mean that this is over. It's not over till we have a vaccine.
But in all fairness, I mean, if you waited till there was adequate testing, you could be into August or
That's
after.
why
Yeah.
we have to make the decisions based on the information that we have. We wanted different information, we don't have it, so we're pivoting a bit and beginning to make those decisions based on the information that we have, which I think is what everybody has to do.
What has been your experience working with the state, and have they been a good partner to help, and Governor Parson?
So I talk with Governor Parson a couple of times a week. I'll talk with him again in a day or two. I think it's tomorrow. And so, you know, they're struggling as well. We are very interested in getting our federal allocation from the CARES Act from the governor. So that's something that we're working with them on right now. We want an allocation per capita in the city of St. Louis that's the same as what St. Louis County has gotten, because St. Louis County got their money directly from the federal government.
It's an interesting thing, you know. A lot of rural folks I know, frankly, like Butler County got almost $5 million. As of right now, there's no foreseeable way to spend $1 million on the parameters of the CARES Act. St. Louis probably gets shortchanged because people come to St. Louis that don't live there. The population is a very good indicator there.
Correct.
How do you change that mixture and that algorithm to probably put the money where it's needed?
Well, we're going to work with the governor to do that. And the governor and the treasurer, Scott Fitzpatrick, are running that show right now. So we're working with them on that. And you know, they're in a tough position too, but the state got $2.4 billion. About a little over $1 billion of that was allocated for local governments. And so we're very interested in getting our per capita share of that, because frankly, we've bought lots of tests. We've bought lots of PPE. They haven't all been delivered yet, but we're on the hook for them when they ship them to us. We have done an incredible amount of work to secure additional beds for homeless individuals. All of that costs incredible amounts of money. And sometimes I say we're spending money like we have it.
Let me ask you, is the city's budget, obviously, like every home, business, within the municipalities, what is the status of the city's budget right now?
The city's budget is very sobering.
Yeah.
We, in this last quarter that we're in right now, city's budget's probably going to be off, our revenue's going to be off about $30 million. And that's just the best guess that we have right now, because here we are, May the 2nd, 3rd, whatever today is, and we've got 2 more months, June and July. And when you consider there are 30 million people, 1 in 6 people in this country has filed for unemployment.
Yeah.
1 in 6 people in the workforce is a better way of saying that, has filed for unemployment. And so we're pretty dependent on our earnings tax in the city of St. Louis. Between the earnings and the payroll tax in our budget, it's 40 to 42%. And so when you don't have people working, they're not paying earnings tax. The other thing, of course, is sales tax. And we all know that we've been staying at home. I looked at my own credit card bill just a couple of days ago. Came in the mail. I get it online also, but I still get the paper copy. And I opened it up, and I was like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. My credit card bill was not very much compared to what it usually is. That's a bad side. Personally, that was good. On the other side of it, that means I didn't pay much sales tax. And that means that the city's sales tax is going to be down.
Mayor Lucas has talked about contact tracing. It's a pretty unique idea, innovative. Steve Elman in St. Charles County talks about contact tracing. As you begin to open things up, what does the city do? Are you able to incorporate a contact tracing plan that has
absolutely
credible results?
We've been contact tracing since day one of this. And in fact, we have a little experience with contact tracing because you have to do it for tuberculosis patients, and we sometimes have a few of those. You also have to do it for STDs. We have more of those than we would like. And so we actually have, it's a program, it's called Qualtrics or Qualtrics. And so if there's an individual who has come up positive for COVID, of course, we talk to them and we see who they've been around, who are their contacts. We talk to their family members, who have they had a significant or exposure to in the last few weeks. We might talk to their supervisor at work to see, well, were they at lunch in a lunchroom for an hour with 4, 5, 6 people? So those are their contacts. And then what we do is we contact those individuals. We get them into a program where we give them information, education, we give them a thermometer, we give them the sleeves. Twice a day, they have to take their temperature, go online, either on their smartphone or on the computer, go online, fill out, answer some questions, put their temperature in, and that's the fundamentals of contact tracing. So ours
Do you
is
find
pretty.
folks are willing to do that?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. They don't want to come down with COVID. They will do that. Now, if somebody doesn't, let's say they don't.
You're the
do
mayor
it.
of St. Louis. I'm just a simple West Butler County hillbilly. I don't want the government knowing where I'm at. That seems like it'd be hard to convince people to.
Well, you're
to let
supposed to
you
be
do.
home. See, if you have been exposed to somebody with COVID-19, you're quarantined, right? So you're supposed to be at home. But even if you are at home, we want to know if you're getting sick. We don't want you to get
Gotcha.
sick.
Yep.
And so we're asking you some questions about how are you feeling? What is your temperature? And so you do that. Now, if you decide you're not going to do that, then we pick up the phone and we call you, and then we go, knock on your door. But it's because we don't want you to be there and be sick, and we don't know it, and we can't help you. So that really is the crux of contact tracing.
One last thing. There are people, I think, in urban areas who see this very seriously. Maybe even, it's not if you're right, maybe too seriously. There's people in rural Missouri that maybe don't see this as seriously. What would you say to somebody that maybe they're out in Texas County and they just don't quite understand what all this has been about?
Well, first of all, I think the people in Texas County are smart people too. I'm from rural Missouri.
Yes, ma'am.
So you remember that once in a while I try to break myself and I say Missouri, but so I have relatives. I've got a sister who lives in rural Missouri, and I think when you live far apart, she lives on property. She's got, 40 or 80 acres or something. And so her life is not nearly as dense with other people as mine is. And so she probably doesn't have as much exposure, although people in rural Missouri still get sick, but they have not gotten sick like people that are living really close to one another, maybe in multi-generational families, still going to work every day. So I understand that who ever thought that we would be dealing with a pandemic? In our country, the most successful, best country in the world, and still we've had over 1 million cases.
Well, let me ask you the one thing I think everybody in the state would make them happy. When will the Cardinals be playing again?
When will the Cardinals be playing again? Or the Blues? The Blues have a season to finish.
And that's great. But back to the Cardinals.
Back to the Cardinals. Okay, fine. Back to the Cardinals. I hope they're playing by midsummer.
So if you're talking to the president and you're in a meeting with President DeWitt and you need somebody to volunteer to go to the first 40 or 50 games just to make sure it's safe, I will sacrifice.
it?
I'll do it for you. I'm in.
Okay,
Just
good.
call my number.
Okay,
Madam Mayor, thank you. I know you're very busy right now for joining us. I appreciate it.
thank you. Appreciate being on with you.
We'll be right back with our settled down social distance opinion maker panel with Lou Hamilton and Gregg Keller after this.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics. The ultimate insider of St. Louis, Lou Hamilton, joins us. Thank you, sir.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Nice to
and
see
Gregg Keller, the best Twitter account, I'd say bar none. Mazer, I think you've eclipsed Mazer. I think he's in a clear second now.
Well, that's great praise. I love Jeff's Twitter. I'll take it.
Let's talk about the what's on everyone's minds, COVID-19. You see, we have a little bit of a shrunk down social distancing opinion maker panel. Let's talk about how the president's response. I mean, this comes down, the buck stops there, as Harry Truman said. How has the president's response been?
I think it's been pretty strong of late. I think if I'm a Democrat, what I'm worried about at this point is that the nation seems to be moving into a position where, Lord willing, we're getting past some of the most serious public health aspects of this, and what we're moving into is the economic phase of it. And if you look at how not just Missourians, but Americans as a whole feel about this president, they clearly believe that Republicans and this president have what it takes and is the particular party and individual they want in office to turn this economy around once we get past the initial public health scare.
Lou Hamilton, I mean, I think you live in a place where most people will not take that same opinion.
Well, no, with all due respect to my friend, he is my friend, Gregg Keller. I think he's been drinking that Lysol. It's seriously, I think the polling, the nationwide polling that I've seen suggests it's 60+%, maybe 70% of the people across the country want to keep the shutdowns in place until we get a handle on this. And, when you see, for example, Los Angeles, the mayor of Los Angeles, one of the most populous cities in the United States and the world, saying that they're going to start offering testing to everybody who wants it, whether you got symptoms or not. The question is, where do you get the testing? You know where they got it? They bought it from South Korea. Los Angeles did. So, I mean, I have a problem jumping onto the bandwagon that the president's doing a good job when everybody's scrambling for resources and he's turning them, like scorpions in a bottle, one state versus the next to fight over scarce resources. So I would probably disagree with that.
There's probably nobody I know that has more connection to Washington that I talk to regularly than you. But now I'm from SEMO. Now we were Trump when you St. Louis people were rigging caucuses for Ted Cruz or whatever. But I'll tell you, I think that when you look back on this, maybe not even from a political standpoint, but the testing could be better. You hear serious policymakers saying we're now 8 weeks into this, we should have more testing. How's he going to rectify that at the end of the day?
We've tested when it's on a per capita basis. The United States has tested just about as many people as nearly any other country in the entire world, maybe with the possible exception of South Korea. I think if Democrats are really going to start casting stones when it comes to this from a political standpoint, though, I think they need to look at people like Andrew Cuomo in New York State, the state that has been the hardest hit from all of this. Do you know what they just announced in New York City the other day, which is basically where this entire thing started and how it spread throughout the entire city of New York, through the state of New York, and then the entire country? They weren't even wiping down the subway trains in New York City, which is where this virus was propagating itself, and why 11,000 New York City residents have now died from this. Again, I'll just say, if Democrats are going to cast stones, they're going to have to answer for the fact that they couldn't even wipe down the subway trains in New York City where this thing was spreading.
I would submit that nobody's been wiping down the subway trains ever.
I don't understand you people sitting in the subways anyhow, but if you're Joe Biden, it is a little hard because your opponent's on TV every day, monopolizing everything. I mean, if Trump does a good job, you're somewhat hamstrung just to sit and watch.
And you can't be too blatantly partisan, in the criticism because you look like it's self-aggrandizing, which it would be. So yeah, it's there's a lifetime between now and November. So
but if you're Joe Biden, it's got to be tough sitting watching television. The whole world is monopolized by your opponent. There's really not much you can do about it.
If I'm Joe Biden and Joe Biden's campaign, I'm very pleased by the fact that my guy cannot be on television screens all that much because Joe Biden is incapable of putting together consecutive sentences at this point. Seeing the slow, sad decline of that man and how Democrats are taking advantage of him by running him for president has been truly sad.
It's going to be interesting, though, if I've heard serious people say, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe he doesn't have it all together. I don't know that I've actually seen that in practice a whole lot, but in a presidential campaign, if you're not up to it, it will out. And you can't hide that.
It is what it is. I disagree with you on that, too. I think, I know people that have spent a fair amount of time with former Vice President Biden in the last few months. They're involved in his campaign, and they're not looking the other way when they talk about his cognitive ability.
Hillary Clinton spent some time with him just the other day where she announced his endorsement online via Zoom with him. And Joe Biden actually fell asleep during the endorsement announcement itself.
That's what he should do, is he should have Hillary Clinton with him all the time.
I think that would
make
can't hurt, right?
That would be a good campaign ad. He might get some Republican votes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the legislature's back in session right now. Here's the thing, Greg. If the second floor is telling regular Missourians to stay home, the third floor is taking a huge group meeting in Jeff City from people from all over the state. It is a little bit confusing if you say you drive a truck from Belton.
And that's one of my primary concerns about the Missouri legislature being in session at this point, is that the U.S. Constitution is very clear on this. Government should be in session when the people have an opportunity to redress their grievances against the government. And most Missourians believe, whether they're right or wrong, that they are not allowed in the Missouri State Capitol right now. And I think it raises some really serious constitutional questions about whether or not they should be in session in the first place.
Hat tip, though, to Senator Schatz and Senator Rowden, if you do walk to the state capitol, you can go right in there and watch the Missouri Senate conduct business.
I don't think your average Missourian knows that.
It might be true,
I think they assume that they're prohibited from being there, and that's what gives rise to the constitutional concern.
It is a mixed message. Do you think tomorrow people still have that opinion? If the states reopen, as it will be tomorrow, do you think that people still have that opinion, or they'll still think that?
I think there's a not small portion of people who will not go to the state capitol under circumstances in which they normally would.
Well, it might be smart, but they feel like they can't.
I think of the 32 people across the state that might be inclined to want to go to Jefferson City to watch that show. Maybe 16 of them would stay at home, and the other 16 is still going to show up. You know,
although we have buses of St. Louis folks that come protest all the time. Here's one thing they are doing.
I know. I've been cooped up for 6 weeks, Scott. I don't get out very often, so
And if you do get out, will you be joining us in Jefferson City?
No.
Let's talk about something they are doing, though. Clean Missouri passed. There was a few folks that were trying to rattle cages about it. There was no real campaign against it, and it was very well done. It passes. I don't think anybody really cared about the ethics stuff that it was passed on. They cared about the redistricting.
Right.
I don't know. Gregg, this is just my simple white trash intuition about this. You don't have anybody really has serious money to beat this. It's so hard to get a yes. A no so much easier. They have an organized campaign to get a no. I think if you're a Democrat and this gets put back on the ballot, you're likely going to have now 2 public votes in favor of this, and you can draw as radical a map as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think Democrats, to your point, Scott, were very smart about the way they took the redistricting in there and hid it in such a way that it really didn't draw the attention of some of the other things that they did. Republicans in Jefferson City are saying that this in no way, shape, or form repeals that. All it does is it gives Missouri voters an opportunity to vote on what is actually, from an ethics and government standpoint, a more difficult bill for lobbyists and elected officials to get around.
I mean, I don't think gerrymander's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Right.
I don't think we had gerrymandered districts to any large degree before. However, if they redraw them now,
We did, and it depends on, who's in charge. Democrats, in all fairness, Democrats had control of the legislature for a long time, and if there was a little bit more comedy between the Republicans and the Democrats than there is now, but I mean, there were clearly gerrymandering that went on, but mostly it was gerrymandering in the Democratic districts by the Democratic power brokers and but not gerrymandering between the parties.
I mean, what changed when Bob Griffin was Speaker to when Elijah Hart's Speaker? The main difference is pro-life, pro-gun, rural Missourians used to vote
Right.
Democrat. Now they vote Republican.
Right.
And that's all the district drawing aside.
I
The
agree with
general
that.
point is that.
I agree with that. I don't think that they're going to be able to repeal that thing.
I don't either. I think whatever map was going to happen will be more emboldened by a second vote.
And y'all did me a favor. I mean, they reduced lobbying fees, lobbying gifts to $5 last time. Now it's down to nothing, which means, and I don't take people out wine and dine them anyway. But it makes accounting a lot easier.
There you go. I think when they were sitting there, the Missouri legislator was like, we want to help Lou Hamilton. That is our priority here.
Yeah.
Gregg Keller's talking. We had Eric Schmidt on the show last week. I'm not a lawyer. Wouldn't even begin to know whether you can sue China. But I will say this: I think China was a bad actor here. Now that's just my gut. But now, and I like the fact somebody's doing something to remind folks as to why your bank account's going, why you can't go to work. There is some folks in China that could have done some things to prevent this.
Absolutely. It started in China. They knew about it in China. It spread. They lied to the world community about it for weeks, if not months. There's a reason that it's perfectly okay to call this thing the Wuhan virus, because that's where it started. I'm simply amazed, and Attorney General Schmidt was the first Attorney General in the entire nation. He is suing the Chinese Communist Party. He's the first AG in the country to do that. I'm amazed at the tact that Democrats here in Missouri have taken against that. You have a sitting Attorney General taking on the Chinese Communist Party, and at least the people running against Eric Schmidt for Attorney General are rushing to aid and comfort the Chinese Communist Party against America in this lawsuit. It doesn't matter probably politically because there are a couple of also-rans who no one knows and aren't raising any money. Schmidt's going to crush them both regardless. But I'm amazed to see Democrats rushing to the aid of this Chinese Communist Party against America on this.
It's great politics. It makes it awfully hard to be against this. I mean, maybe it doesn't work, but it is good.
You know, I will submit publicly that Eric Schmidt's a friend of mine. I didn't vote for him because he's the other party, and he's done some generally good things. But I think this lawsuit is what you say down the country. It's all saddle and no horse or something like that. I don't know.
No cattle?
Yeah,
Maybe all
something
had
like
no
that. Something like that.
Jeff Sean, legislator from Butler County, introduced a resolution to a similar effect. And I agree with you, but I do think there is something to be said for, you don't want to let folks forget that these people did this. And let me just tell you, if this started in America, the rest of the world would never let us live it down.
It's a red meat kind of thing. I don't know at the end how much luck a state is going to have trying to sue a sovereign nation. Regardless of what the background is on the thing, I think it's more headlines than substance.
I've talked to smart legal scholars, albeit conservative legal scholars in Washington, D.C., at places like the Federalist Society, and they think that this lawsuit has a legitimate chance of causing the Chinese Communist Party some real problems down the road. They don't think it's fluff.
Be interesting. Judge Limbaugh drawing it adds another little note of interest to it. Very thoughtful guy. It'll be interesting to see what they do. So the state's wrapping up the budget. It's going to be cut drastically. I think that I had a friend tell me that most Missourians will never be in contact with anybody that's COVID virus. Unless you're from St. Louis, you have a much greater chance. What they will feel is the economic ramifications. How does this play politically? Do you think folks will give state leadership and Republicans? The Republicans in the White House more of a pass because people will say this came from the virus. It's not going to change how you're broke and hurting.
Yeah, people who are currently in office have been dealt a tough hand with this one. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I do believe that as we move towards, hopefully, the economic recovery side of this thing, I think people are going to come to realize that it was the Republican Party who was erring on the side of, once we got past the health care threat, moving towards an economic solution to get the country back up under its feet, whereas Democrats have really been more of the opinion that as long as there's a single person who has the Wuhan virus anywhere in the United States, we need to crush the American economy. We have lost 30 million jobs now. We're on the way to crushing another 20 million. 50 million kids are out of K through 12. Another 50 million are out of secondary schools and education. And the Democrats' party's only solution to any of this is keep everyone on lockdown in perpetuity.
Our only solution is move on to who won the week because we're about out of time. So who won the week?
I'm going to say Governor Parson. I think he's at the height of it. They were saying 40,000 Missourians were going to die from this. As of today, it's 332 people, maybe with a high of 1,000. A lot of that is due to his leadership.
Who won the week?
I say Lyda Krewson, mayor of St. Louis. She's managed to manage through this crisis without playing politics, with playing it right down the middle. I think she's done a great job.
I've got two. I'm going to say Tony Luetkemeyer moved a couple bills to the legislature that was uphill fights in this interesting situation. And Lacey Clay, how about the quote of the world? Talking about Stacey Abrams, one of the vice presidents, you can't take losers' tickets to the winner's window.
That's I'm with you on that one. That was.
And since we're short a couple, people say Anheuser-Busch. What a great company. We will see you next week from This Week in Missouri Politics from Kansas City with Mayor Lucas.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.